Now, it was over a year ago when you last heard from the next guest. Patrick Poon came in to tell you about a new book that he'd written called Tales from a Male Nurse. The book gave a male insight, really, into the lives of people working within the NHS. Well, Patrick is back now because he's written a follow-up, and it's called Further Tales from a Male Nurse. Hello.
Hello, thank you.
Further Tales. As if you could ever stop. I imagine there are so many tales to tell. You've probably got another 3 or 4 books in you.
Well, that's not true, actually. This might be my last book.
Oh.
The next one might be a fiction. But still in nursing. And
based on the field that you know.
That's right.
Just tell us a little bit about your background and how you got started. In what I said earlier on is got to be one of the most difficult but also rewarding professions.
Yeah, it is. I spent most of my life in nursing. I came here at the age of 19, and I started my training nursing here, and I became a staff nurse in general nursing, and then a charge nurse in charge of the ward, and then I became a nursing officer or surgical unit. What's unusual perhaps in my career is being a male nurse in general nursing. It's quite rare in the world of women, if you like. And and I enjoy my times. And sometimes, about 2 years ago, and I always enjoy writing also. And I jotted down all the ideas. And then 2 years ago, I started writing, and it seemed all coming through from my mind quite naturally.
Why do you think it is that there are so few male nurses? Have women just got that caring quality that some men haven't got?
It was said that in nursing in those days was 10% of the male nurses and 90% of the 10%, they all work in psychiatric nursing.
Right.
And I think in general, nursing may be physically harder work.
I see.
I think this is perhaps my cynical point of view.
Yeah, well, yeah.
And not many male nurses actually work in general nursing. And and you're right. I think, suppose in the society, people look at ladies as a female carer than men.
Is it a job that you always knew you wanted to do? Was it something that called you a vocation?
No, I think it's just happened to me by chance, really. When I was a teenager in Hong Kong, I was still am a restless person, and I didn't know what to do in my life, and I was no good with screwdrivers and hammer.
Join the club, yeah.
And I didn't like an office job all the time, so I thought I tried it, and I liked it, and I stayed in for 30 years.
But you were very keen to write about it and to let people know what it was like, particularly working within the NHS, weren't you? Why was that?
I suppose at the time I did lead a sheltered life. I knew nothing else. And the NHS at the time offered me good opportunities to be trained in various schemes of training. And I enjoyed it, and I enjoyed the responsibility. It was physically hard work and mentally also quite stressful to run a ward of 30 patients acutely ill. Because I was a charge nurse on a medical ward, acute, and same as acute surgical ward also for 5 years. And I suppose it's the buzz and excitement of it.
Yeah, okay. Well, and every day a different challenge, I imagine.
That's right. Not every day is different.
The NHS gets a lot of criticism, of course. It also gets a lot of praise from people who've benefited from it. But what's it like as an employer? What's it like being employed by the NHS?
Well, in my days, most of the time, it was pretty good. I mean, they really, provided a lot of good training, which was free of charge in those days. Now, perhaps it's different now. And they were a good employer, and the pension scheme was good. At the time, I didn't think about it. Now I'm reaping the reward, and the terms and conditions were good. Now, as time goes on, I know the last 15 years may be very different. And I think the terms and conditions have changed and so on. But certainly in my time, I think they were a good employer.
How do you cope with what must be actually quite a harrowing set of tasks to perform? I mean, you've worked all over the place, haven't you? And in your books, you look at, as I said, the highs and the lows. But how do you cope with death and with the sort of daily, mess of the job that it must demand of you?
Yeah, you're right. I suppose I play guitar, I play tennis, to get my aggression out, so to speak.
Okay.
And when I'm out of work, I really have nothing to do with nursing, but do physical exercise maybe.
Switch off.
To switch off, try to, And it's true, on the acute ward especially, sometimes you do have stressful, minds and thinking about it. And you learn to cope with it, really. I suppose in those days I was much younger, and because of excitement carried on, you just carried on.
I want to focus on a couple of the stories in your latest book in just a few moments' time on BBC Radio Derby. In particular, I want to ask you about a woman called Blunty. We'll talk about her in just a few moments. Not Bunty, but Blunty. It's Paloma Faith on BBC Radio Derby. Trouble with My Baby, 11:22. Now, Patrick Poon is a male nurse, originally from Hong Kong. He came to this country to give his services to the NHS. He's written 2 books about his experiences, and I want to delve into a couple of those just now. Before I do, Patrick, how do you deal with the question of confidentiality? Because you do give quite specific details here about patients, and you use either their name or a pseudonym, I'm not sure. But you must have been a little bit worried about the legal aspect of it.
That's correct, yes. That's why I've got to be very careful not to use the real names and so on. But I was lucky that to self-publish the book, I have a good friend who proofread my book and edited my book, and he happens to be a lawyer.
That's helpful.
That's right. And there are some tales that are written, and my second book is proofread by a friend of mine, and he's a deputy head teacher, and he's also... There's a couple of tales he said, you got to be careful. Yeah. And therefore, there are 2 or 3 tales I haven't printed out.
Now, one of your tales in this new book, Tale 24, is called Unusual Situations. I imagine you're no stranger to unusual situations. Which is this one? It says at the top, truth is stranger than fiction.
That's right. The tale is about Gwen's twist of fate. She was an old lady of 78 years old, always been very well and looked after her husband. Didn't want to do anything else but to look after the husband till she fell 2 or 3 years ago, and she was more immobile. And of course, her life really been turned upside down. And amazingly, she cooked quite well. And after a year or so, she was getting better and better. She had 2 daughters, one living in Cornwall where I live, one living up in Yorkshire. And then 2 or 3 years later, she had another 4. And she was really, really depressed, and she thought that's the end of me. And she was admitted to the ward. She didn't want any operation, and she told the consultant doctors that she wanted to die. And she stopped the medication, including the Joxin, which is a heart drug. It really is to strengthen and lengthen the pulse. And so it's an important drug. But anyway, she wanted to die, and she wanted to stop all the medication, including her heart pacemaker. And now she didn't switch off the heart pacemaker to start with, and she stopped a lot of important medication, and doctors said okay, and let her die. The doctors respected that, and same as the 2 daughters, and the grandchildren paid the respect, bought her flowers and so on. And she didn't want to eat either. She wanted just to drink a few sips of water and wanted to die within a week or 2. Now 2 weeks on, we don't know why she didn't die, and she became a little bit stronger, in spite of the medications she didn't take, and hardly any food. The GP came to see her. We don't know what they talked about. And she seemed, after the episode of this talking to the GP, she said, perhaps I drink a little bit more. And she started to eat a little bit more. And by miracle, she's alive and well. And regardless of 2 or 3 weeks of no medication.
It's amazing, isn't it? The strength of the human spirit sometimes.
That's right. And the medical team was careful, and they didn't understand how come this lady can survive. Now, this is a true story, and she's alive and well. And the doctor reviewed her medication and skipped half of the medication and put her on something else, and she's alive and well.
Amazing.
And that's right. And although she's still a frail old lady, but that's why perhaps I put down the last sentence in this tale call, and it says that the fate is always said to be the hunter of life, but one could not hunt fate. If you want to die, you may not be able to do so.
And the book is full of such tales and your spin on them. It's been great to talk to you and to get the measure of what it must be like to spend your entire professional life in such a sort of high octane environment, really. And I've no doubt, despite the fact you say that this is probably going to be your last book, I've no doubt you've got many more stories in you. Patrick, it's been lovely to talk to you today. Thanks very much indeed for coming into BBC Radio Derby. Patrick Poon's book is self-published at pkspoon.co.uk is the website if you want to go on there and see how you can get a copy of Further Tales of a Male Nurse.
May I just say that also is on sale at Amazon.com as an ebook.
You may indeed.
And Waterstone.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. You got the plug in there. 26 minutes past 11, Richard Spur for Sally Pepper, and Rob Watts is